Oh, now I get to the distinct honor to introduce my good friend and partner in crime at the Blank Canvas sessions. And you all know and love him, and I just have the greatest respect for him, and I'm so excited to dive in to what he's got today. Improvise or thrive, pivot or die. So it is going to be a phenomenal session. So Roger, I am going to make you the star here, and let's see. There you are. Way better looking. All right.
Oh my goodness, Jim. Thank you for the kind words. I have two screens. I'm first going for my phone, which is going to be kind of mobile because I move around. So I'm going to be all over the place. So bear with me. And then I'm going to share some slides on my laptop here. And so I'm excited that you joined us. But if you're from Northeast, the Northeast Ohio, or you're from an area where as September rolls around, it starts to cool off and the leaves start to change, and then you're probably one of those fall lovers. Well, it was 1989. 1989, I was just finishing my senior year of college, and just like every other year, all the way back to the mid-'70s, my younger brother and I would venture to the local haunted house. Actually, we'd go to 2 or 3 of them. The haunted houses back in the 70s and the 80s, and certainly in the early 90s, were run by the JCs, and the Lions Club. There was some church organizations, some Youth for Christ that would use that as a fundraiser, and folks would flock there every October. It was open usually on a Friday and Saturday night. Sometimes you get in for $2 or $3. I think that was a regular ticket price. Well, it was 1989, and we decided to go. And it was not only the 2 of us, but as we were older and we began to drive, we made sure that we took our girlfriends with us. And there was a reason for that. And then the reason was, if it was a scary haunted house, and often, even if it wasn't scary, it gave the opportunity for you to hold that girl's hand and for her to kind of nuzzle in close and to make some physical contact. And so there was some social pressure, I think, for these small groups to connect, right? Even physically in touch. And so that was part of our hopes. But anyways, my younger brother, myself, and our 2 girlfriends decided to venture to a haunted house here locally in Ohio. It was called the Bloodview Haunted House, and it was run by the Lions Club. And after paying I think it was $3 to get in, we ventured over to the queue line. And as we moved to the queue line, we saw that there were hundreds of people waiting to get in. Maybe my guess is 400 to 500 people. That's a big crowd of people to be standing in a queue line, just kind of back and forth and back and forth. And that queue line was chaotic. It would start to move around, and people would laugh, and then you hear some screaming, and then you'd see the line just kind of parts. And as we started into the line, it was kind of funny because there was this natural alignment of our group. I went first. My girlfriend came in behind me. It was Les, and then at the very back of our group of 4 was Amy. That was Les's girlfriend. We knew right away that we were going to have a special night because Amy already started to use Les as a human shield, trying to keep himself away from anything that might jump out or be scary. Okay, so imagine 400 or 500 people in the queue line. We're entering the queue line, and all of a sudden there was this kind of this screaming and laughing and people partying. And from afar, we could see this character. And I'll share with you right off the bat. His name, he was referred to, and his character name was Booger. And from afar, we could see this guy moving about, creating chaos. We could see the kind of the dust in his hair that was shaking. He had this stream of snot hanging from a nostril. And on occasion, he would grab his thumb and his pinky and he tweezed a giant booger out of his nose. I'm talking giant, like this long. And people would fly out of the way, and people would laugh, and people would scream, and then all of a sudden, maybe 30 seconds or a minute later, everything would just kind of come back into order. People get back into the line, and then venture up to the front of the house and into the haunted house. 400 to 500 people. I would say that if I had to describe it, Booger was kind of a puppeteer. It seemed like he had that entire crowd at his fingertips, and he could just kind of control who was screaming, who was going. And from afar, after this group is going in and some semblance is starting to change, he turns towards our group and smiles. And if you saw if you ever saw Booger's face, he has a misshapen face. He was missing some teeth, and he looks over us and he smiles. And our group of four is standing there, and Amy goes all the way in the back. He knew right away that coming up into that queue line was a group of four, and the person at the very end was incredibly jumpy. So anyway, Booger continues to act. It probably took us 15, 20 minutes to make our way closer to him. He was moving around, but for some reason, he took his good old time getting over to us. Well, it wasn't long before we were 10 or 20 feet from Booger. And Amy was all over the place, And he knew that he had not only a group of four that was going to really enjoy this interaction, but he had 500 people in that queue line who were waiting for the cat to pounce on the mouse. And Booger was taking his good old time. And believe me, Amy was tugging our group of four. She was not allowing us to move 1 foot closer. And Booger wasn't coming towards us. He was just waiting like a cat ready for a victim. It was funny because Amy grabbed her purse, and she's kind of reaching in her purse, and out from over the top of my brother's shoulder, she starts waving what felt like, can you guys see? She started waving what felt like a white flag, a truce flag, like I give up certain end, and everybody, all 500 people were watching. Anyways, what Booger did is he moved in our direction, full character, snot running down his nose, dust falling from his hair, had a broom in one hand. He looked bedraggled and homeless. And he grabbed the tissue, and he turned his back towards us, and he grabbed that tissue, and he tucked it between his butt cheeks, just like that, right? And so he continued to act back into that group of folks, right? Tissue in between his butt cheeks, acting from that folks, and spent several minutes pushing that group, causing some chaos. As soon as he turned his back, I think that Amy felt that there was a little bit of safety, because it wasn't long that Booger turned, grabbed the tissue, wiped the snot off his nose, and started chasing Amy. Amy bolted. She was gone. She left the queue line. I think she went back to the car. She disappeared. The rest of us are just standing there, and the entire queue line is a roar. I mean, people are laughing, and there's other folks that are enjoying that show. Booger entertained 500 people with that interaction, and he's holding that tissue, which just caused Amy to go the other direction. Funny thing about it is he took that tissue, he turned, 400 or 500 people watching, balled it up, wiped his nose, and threw it towards the crowd. And that tissue felt like it was nuclear, because like it was a bomb going off, because people just like, and went every one direction. And Booger laughed. He kind of shuffled his way and just kind of shuffled out of that queue line for a bit. And that interaction 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, it was 1989, is something that has burned itself on my brain. And you'll understand why as I kind of peel back the layers on that. We talked about how the haunted houses back in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s were run by nonprofits and volunteers. Because it made that interaction made such an impression on me, I went around and volunteered myself. And over the next 2 or 3 years, I had the opportunity to work alongside a phenomenal group of improvisational actors, original characters, but I also had the opportunity to work alongside Booger himself. I was a kind of an observer. I kind of tried to really understand what it was doing. People had slightly different, not only slightly different styles, but very different styles. And I was able to work and be alongside several folks and kind of learn how it was done, and made some observations, tried to take those skills and create something that worked for me. So 3, 4, 5 years into kind of apprenticeship there, the haunted house industry took a big shift, and the nonprofits continued, but the for-profit houses started to come in, the for-profit shows. And that's where, if you're here local, Jog Lake, Cedar Point started extending their amusement season out all the way to the end of October. You had folks with big budgets start to step in, and the for-profits started to come into existence. And during that time, there became a demand for somebody to teach that improv acting, most notably the acting that would take place in large queue lines for big shows. Now, if you're not from Cleveland and you're from California, and you're from the West Coast, the East Coast, the big shows, Not Scary Farm, all the big amusement and big budget houses started to invest heavily. So there became a demand to learn and for me to teach that art of improv. So I took what is very much an art and I try to create a model at which it can not only be taught, but at which it could be learned and then kind of shifted back to the individuality of that actor alongside of it. So 30 years ago, Booger, 25 years ago, started teaching this concept. Was teaching it really to experiential actors. They were hunt actors that were working in big queue lines. It was folks that were creating original characters. We're getting thrown out into a group of not only 500, but sometimes 2,000 to 3,000 people. And to keep those folks, those customers, that audience engaged during the 45 minutes, the hour that they had to wait to get into that front door. So there is some of the background. But the model itself, I broke into 3 different steps. And I'm going to go into those steps right now. Those steps are stage, go, engage. So the steps, so I was meeting with hunt actors, and I was meeting with other theatrical folks. I worked at the Medieval Fantasy Fair. I was working with folks that were doing miming and clowning. And we broke that improvisation into 3 steps: stage, go, engage. Stage, go, engage. And it's fortunate that it's rhyme, and so that's easier to remember. Stage, go, engage. And so what I want to do is move over to this laptop real quickly, and then we'll come back, and I'm going to go onto this whiteboard. I'm going to go ahead and continue breaking down those stages or those steps. I want to go here because I want to offer just a little bit of information on, and to give you some visuals here about people who stage their characters. But if you would, before I go here, think about William Shakespeare and his quote, all the world's a stage. And if hundreds of years ago that was an observation and it was a popular line, think at how much more that's relevant today in this virtual age. All the world's a stage. All the world's a stage. So think about that. But before I flip over, I need you to close your eyes. I need everybody to close your eyes except for Jim. And everybody close your eyes. Just keep your eyes closed. And Jim, if you could give me the screen share. Let me see if I can just take it here. Everybody keep your eyes closed. Everybody's eyes closed. All right, keep them closed. And everybody keep them closed. I can see whether you're looking or not. And I'm going to pull up some images here. All right, everybody open your eyes. Open your eyes. And so I've told this story about Booger for 25 years. And I'm going to show you what Booger looks like, because I'm sure that everybody has that image. Remember, homeless, looking, bedraggled, some missing teeth, mouth misshapen, a big booger inside of his nose that's not so. So here, are you able to see that, Beth? Mm-hmm. All right, here's Booger. All right, this is the 80s. And this was a guy who not only interacted with hundreds of people that night, but thousands and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands over his 10 years as an actor. Another picture of Booger. But when we talk about improvisational acting, I don't want to just talk about as keeping it as simple as a haunt actor. Because if you are a comedian, and my wife Beth and I are big fans of Sebastian, I can't say his last name, Maniscalco. He is kind of a normal looking guy, right? But when he gets on stage, he transforms and digs into his deep Italian roots and it completely transforms his behavior and uses that as comedy. Again, staging. Bob Turner, I don't know if Bob is on here, but Bob is kind of a mild-mannered guy, but in the month of October, he turns into Crazy Bob. Again, interactive character, great staging. I think is Lefty Boo still out there? So Janet and James, they're also members of the Tuesday at 7 community. You'll see that they're just such a beautiful couple. But on Friday nights, they transform into the Mummy and the Monkey, horror show hosts. You gotta think about that. What they're staging. Keith KONYA, my cousin. This is a 1-year transformation. He's a graphic designer. He designs all kinds of stuff, water towers. I mean, you drive by his designs all the time, but in 2019, Keith KONYA, 2020, completely changed his image. Oh, great. Keith, I'm glad you're here. Big image change here, right? And so staging. Ben Armstrong, if you folks know him, he's kind of like an average looking guy. But not only in the month of October, but several times, he also was a television host. But he transforms himself into this character being the Harvest Man, which found itself out on national platforms, national television. LeBron James, each year you can take a look at LeBron. He could probably say that was a certain year because that's the year that I wore that headband and that wristband. But the chalk throw was a whole stage. Take a look at all those people taking photos down there. Think about staging, behaviors of staging. The Millers, we are kind of your average folks, and on occasion we transform into business people. And so think about staging and what you're there to deliver. And then the Fab Four, those witty young Liverpoolians just caught the world, and they transformed over their career to some crazy hippies. And so I wanted to share just some visuals so you could see how staging, character development, persona building is used out in everyday life, whether it's sports, music, entertainment, people on the street, and I'm sure that you guys could probably come up with a ton yourself. Okay, I'm gonna get out of here and go back to my other camera. Guys, bear with me. And by the way, if you would, please also send in some questions, because my wife Beth is monitoring those. And I'm going to stop this share. All right, are we back there? Whoa! All right. So stage, go, engage. Hopefully those images helped you kind of think about some things that might inspire not only things in your mind, but things that you might be able to do as an artist, as an actor, as a business. But I want to talk about the stage. We talked about William Shakespeare, all the world's a stage. Again, we broke the improv model into stage, go, engage. I'm starting with stage. What I will usually do, and I've worked with people over obviously 25 years, and depending upon what we were trying to accomplish, we would then start with that character. If it was a theatrical character, we'd start with an original character worksheet. And this is something that is very necessary to write down, to put into ink, to pour over. It even has, what does your mark look like, or your autograph? And so those are things that need to be done on paper. But the process of original character development, walk people through those steps that are necessary to interact, to have some depth, and it trains folks just through the process. Everything from character name, what are source of inspiration, what does the character look like, what's his description, what makes that character unique, and unique is a very important thing. Talk about background, storyline, or backstory, and the storyline. So tell us not only about what this character is today, but what's that history. So if we go back 10, 20, 30 years, if that's character appropriate, what has that character done? And so as you write that down and you start to go through this process, you start to create a character. It's wonderful if we've got a group of 5, 10 people, because if we've got a small group like that, we create these original characters in a troupe. And the feedback and that group think is phenomenal. In addition to what we've been talking about, the dialogue and voice, it is things like, what are your props? What's your costume and accessories? Are you wearing a hat? Are you wearing a watch? If you're booger, you might be carrying a broom. The whole shtick with the booger up the nose, that was a milk dud, which he could pull out. That was the only thing that had the color and the size that he was looking for. Of course, when the body heat started to melt that milk dud, that chocolatey, sugary goodness just ran right down his upper lip. As well as makeup description, what do you look from the shoulders up? And as you could do that, we could create original character, whether this is a character that works in a haunted location, whether this is a mime, like we talked to the other night about SeaWorld. I remember as growing up that they had mimes that would entertain these huge crowds as they were waiting for Shamu to swim into the aquarium. Clowns. And the list goes on and on and on. And if you have those features and you build that character, it is not difficult to step out in a queue line or in front of an audience and start to have a believable character, and to step out just like Booger did, right? So that is stage. Now, we're not only talking about characters, we're also talking about persona, and I kind of mentally, I kind of think theatrical character, and the persona, I think more of what is our own character? What do we do as individuals? How does Roger Miller, what is my persona? What is it that I'm trying to convey as a person? And right now with the social platforms, the intentionality, is that a word, Beth? Yes? Intentionality? Yeah? Thumbs up. Intentionality of persona building is so important. And if you do it well, and then you'll make a difference to those people in your audience. And remember, we talked about William Shakespeare, all the world's a stage, and it's very much true today. But just like the character, the persona is, what is your name or your nickname? What is your autograph and your personal mark? I think that's an important thing, especially for artists who are signing their canvas. If I take a look at a piece of my artwork and somebody brings me artwork from 1992, I could tell what year that is without putting a date on it because my mark has evolved over the years. If you see my mark today, it is very different than my autograph before. I don't sign it Roger Miller. I sign it with kind of an M, I kind of circle it and put a dot like it's an I. But that's like my Miller mark. Again, it doesn't distract. It's often hidden, but it's my mark that goes on my artwork. Something very important, I think, with persona building. Think about unique and striking, memorable features. And I'm not saying that folks should go out and cut their hair into a mohawk. If that's your thing, do it. But that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is what makes you memorable. Now, Sebastian Maniscalco, the comedian, looks like a mild mannered. What makes him striking and memorable is his movements and his act. And so even if you're like, listen, I'm not into what was that? Raphael, Sarah Jessica Raphael. What was her name? She had those glasses, those purple glasses.
Oh, Sally
Jesse Raphael.
Something like
Everybody,
that.
somebody jump in and let us know who that is. She had purple glasses. Drew Carey had those big, chunky frame glasses. And so often people's persona can be built around something else. We saw Keith KONYA, my cousin. He has hair, but he grew out that big, fat, gray beard, and he shaved his head. And so that image shift opened up some doors for him. And I realized that he's even been doing some male modeling who wanted that persona. And so thank you for sharing that with us, Keith. Think about chin-up appearance, think about wardrobe casting, think about props as individuals. And so whether it's a theatrical original character worksheet, whether it's persona building, it's important to be intentional about your staging, right? If we were to go and we had more time, and we don't, we're pressing the gas here today, we'd go into a bunch of other things, which hopefully when we have some more time, we'll be able to dig into some very important things in terms of persona building. And if you're looking into a theatrical presentation, even some further depth there. But the idea and the necessity to create an original character and importance of persona is very important to a person, I believe, to a show, and also to a business. I mean, if you think about it, there's things like Disney, Geek Squad. Like Geek Squad, their entire business theater is centered around sending guys that look like, I guess, geeks, like nerds, right? And they get into a car and they drive off, and you may see one of 100,000 technicians in the Geek Squad, and they all kind of look the same. So you could create a business centered around this theater, pocket protectors, glasses, hair comb to the side. But whether it's business, whether it is your personal persona, is building your own character, and or your own theatrical, by creating that from the ground up and sending it out on stage. Very important steps. And those folks that do it are memorable, just like Booger was memorable to me 30 years later. Couple very important things is that when we're talking about improvisational acting, we're talking about something very different than traditional theater. And I want you to think about traditional theater. We've all been there. It is typically a stage, and there's backdrop or curtains. There's a side area where actors and actresses come in side to side. There's usually an end to the stage. And often it's a drop off, but in traditional theater, the end of that stage is called and described as the fourth wall. And in traditional theater, there's a script, and the actors will carry on at certain cues. The stage manager to make sure things are moving in the right direction. And that fourth wall is the imaginary wall that separates a traditional theater actor or actors from the audience. The fourth wall, the imaginary wall that separates the traditional theater from the actors. Most of the time, with few exceptions, in traditional theater, that fourth wall is not broken. And so that play is going to go on regardless of what goes on in that audience. And that's an important thing to note, because improvisation is not traditional theater. And in traditional theater, that barrier is something that is exactly that. It's a barrier. And what I want to talk about is how improvisation goes that next level. Okay, how improvisation goes that next level. Before we go to that next level, what I want to do is talk about a few things that are important. One is that as you're staging your character, whether it is your persona or it is a character in person, think about elevating yourself. If Booger had a 12-inch block to step up on, he would have been a shoulder above everybody in that 500-person queue line. So staging in person allows that elevation, right? It's creating a stage, a physical stage if you're in person. If you're virtual, you're creating your stage with your content, you're creating your stage with your look, you're creating your stage with the things that your phone that you're taking out into the community, you're creating your stage by making physical appearances in non-pandemic times. So think about the physical stage. In addition, if you're in a large group, think about miking. Think about your voice. If you can be mic'd and you can not only elevate yourself figuratively, literally, and you can also be louder, and then all of a sudden your staging your improv character becomes way more effective and easily heard. But figuratively, what is your voice virtually as well? So again, I'm trying to take the art of improvisation, trying to create a science so that you can learn it, understand it, so that you can take it and take it back to the art level and create your own stuff. So remember the 3 steps: improvisation, stage, go, engage. Stage, go, engage. Before we go to the second one, go, what I want to say is that as you are in your own persona, whether you are out there on social media and creating some folks, an audience, whether you are in a space where you are acting face to face in a theatrical space, there is something that is maybe one of the top 3 things that I'm going to say today, and that is never break character. Never break character. Because if you have taken time to develop this character, when you break character in front of your audience, and then you have just ruined the experience. If you are developing a persona, and your persona has some very important foundational things, and you break that in front of your audience, you've ruined that experience. And so never break character. All right, so that was a quick overview of stage. We're going to go to go. So that's the second step. Traditional theater, You have your backdrop, your sides, your fourth wall. And in improvisational acting, we must break that fourth wall. We must eliminate that barrier 100% of the time. Improv acting could be up on stage, but improv acting would then enter into the audience. So that second step, go, and I say it 3 times, go, 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 because you need to leave the stage, you need to go to your audience, approach your audience, whether that is a slow approach or whether that is a fast approach or something in between. You need to go to your audience. And I know that we're talking about things in a literal sense, kind of a traditional theater, but I know that folks, that there's green lights going off, and maybe an epiphanal moment here and there for folks to say, oh yeah, I get it in a virtual, in a figurative way too. How do I break that fourth wall and go to my audience? Go to my audience. Sometimes it is important to define something in its opposite. And hang with me for a second. If we think about go, and the go, go, go is such an important part and a necessary part of improvisational acting, think about the opposite, stay. So as a persona, as a theater, you have the choice to stay or to go. As a business, you have the choice to stay or to go. As somebody who is doing their own personal character development, you have the opportunity to stay or to go. And so I'm going to encourage you, I'm going to hope that you find yourself in that go position at all times, because that's what separates the traditional from this improvisational, the importance of go, go, go. There are a couple things that if you're in a traditional theater, or if you're Booger, remember he moved towards our group. He did it in a very calculated, puppeteering kind of way, but he was very intentional about his approach and his go towards us. And likewise, be intentional about your go to your audience. In a live space, if you're doing a haunt act, or if you're doing a mime, or you're doing something that's interactive in a physical space, sometimes you may experience fight or flight, even if it's not anything scary. Like Amy did, she got out of the way and she took off. If you're approaching somebody, believe me, if you're effective as a haunt improv actor, some people are going to give you a kick or a punch, and sometimes it's even subconscious reaction because they feel that they're in a perceived position of danger. So be aware of fight or flight. In terms of in-person acting, I'm a big proponent, and what I teach is in the large majority of every go, it should be in somebody's line of sight. The audience should know what you're doing and perceive that approach to you to be most effective. Think about that figuratively. Think about that literally as well. If somebody were to, if the audience passes by you and that character comes up behind them, you have not maximized your time with them. And that go and that approach is such an important thing because you're breaking that fourth wall. Make it intentional and make it part of your daily existence, not only as your person, but your daily existence as a character actor as well. All right, remember how David Letterman used to kind of put that over? I'm done with that one. All right, so I have this whiteboard here. So think about this. We talked about stage. So if this were a Booger, right, I'll put Booger here. There's a stage. He moved around. He was in a queue line, so there's a possibility of Booger to move in any one direction, right? Any one direction, because he moved back, he would turn, and he'd come back, and so he was able to go anywhere he wanted to in that group of 500 people. So stage go, stage go. Do you guys understand kind of that idea? When folks go, when Booger went, and when you go with your persona, your character, your original theatrical creation, when you go, it is imperative to pause and look and listen. Your character, go to your audience, and then look and listen. Your audience is going to cue your next move. And so that's where we get to the third step. So stage, go, and then engage. And that engagement is, again, you're going to go to them and you're going to stop. You're going to look and you're going to listen, essentially observe, and they will cue your next response. I'm going to put a ring around here, because I call this the engagement, ladies, ring. Man, maybe your ladies need an engagement ring. Man up, buy it. So Booger, stage, go, engage, and he creates an engagement ring, which in a physical space was maybe 500 people wide. In a virtual space, maybe 1 million people wide. If that's who is viewing you. If you are creating a business and you're serving coffee to 5,000 people a day, you're creating an engagement ring as a business. So when you go to the stage, go, engage, what you're doing is creating an engagement ring. If you get here, then you are doing it right. Then you are doing it right. But I want to go back. So character, you're staging your character, you're going to your audience, you look, you listen, and you let them cue your next response. Some people are natural at this. Many people are not. And so as I've been teaching folks for 2.5 decades on how to do this, the way that we prepare them to respond is to very literally grab out a sheet of paper, and that's what we provide. Grab out a sheet of paper, and your character is Booger, and he has snot running down his nose, and he looks kind of homeless, and you carry a broom. What are some things that your audience might do or say? And if Booger went through this class, now he didn't because he was way ahead of me, but if he did, he might say, that audience might just go, oh, that is the grossest thing, or what is it what's that snot that's coming from your nose? That could prompt, pull out the giant milk dud and send everybody a scurry. It could also, he may have also had somebody wave a tissue before. I don't know. But if you're Booger, you're probably preparing for the audience to react around your snot. So if somebody is looking to build an original character, to sit down and say, what are the 10 most common responses that we would expect, they can log that, they can write that down, and they are prepared to interact. And frankly, in the majority of situations, the audience, their reactions are the same. And Beth and I have acted all over the place. We've acted in Atlanta, Chicago, Omaha, Philadelphia, North Carolina. We've acted all over the place, and typically the audiences are the same and their reactions are the same. So by taking that time, by doing the repetitions and logging down the top 10 things that the audience is expected to say, guess what? 90% of the time plus, they're responding in a way that you predicted, and you're prepared to give that response. So stage, go, engage. You go to your audience, you look, you listen. 90% of the time, the audience responds in the exact same way, and then you know how to start that interaction. It could be a single interaction. It could be multiple interactions where there then becomes this dialogue and this movement. But think about this. Let's forget about booger for a second. Think about a college graduate. They just spent $100,000 on their state education. They graduate, they've done well, and now they've finally gotten that interview. And if somebody prepared to improv well, first of all, they probably would have built their social media so that when that employer clicked in on them, they would see their character and they would maybe even make the decision to hire them before they ever stepped face to face with that. So staging that character or your persona is important. When that person would actually go and be face to face with that individual, that high school or that college graduate would then watch and listen by perceiving what's in the office, by perceiving what that person is wearing, and the questions they ask will cue their next response. And we all know, I'm in my 50s, that employers, the top 10 or 20 questions are really predictable. And so if you are an improv preparer, and then you are more likely to get the job than somebody who doesn't prepare for it. So it's just not about hunt, clown, mime, theatrical. It's not just about persona building. It's about learning to improv in every area of life. Because if you learn to improv, you are at an unfair advantage over everybody else. When you go through that process, stage, go, look, listen, engage, it then becomes a very natural skill that happens. What I will tell you is that some of those college graduates get to that interview and something unexpected, an unexpected question comes up, an unexpected event happens. Maybe it's one of those employers or interviewers that just like they get rid of the traditional questions and then they just go straight to something unexpected. By preparing your character, by going into your backstory, what is it that you're willing to share? What is it that you're putting out on stage? By preparing for the expected, you are very prepared for the unexpected as well. Believe me. Learning back in 1989 and those subsequent years when I learned improvisational acting, I learned to create these odd characters. They were unique. They had their own movement. They had their own props. They had their own backstory. And I would go out in the audiences, different places around the country. I go out in front of 500, 5,000 people and interact with them in the queue lines. By doing that on a theatrical situation, a theatrical stage, I was able to step to the side and employ those same techniques to my personal life. And when those folks take those skills, it transfers well into other areas of life. If you are a business and you have a sales force, think about training your sales force to respond to the top 10 or top 15 questions that customers will ask. Think about, Jim was talking about Trade Show University. Trade Show University, it's a show, it's business theater. And at trade shows, how many times have you been to a trade show and people are kind of sitting behind a barrier, a physical barrier behind a table, and they're sitting back there and they're kind of waiting for people to walk up to them. That's not what we teach in improvisational acting. We would take a sales force, teach them to respond to the top 10, 15, 20 things a customer can respond. And then we're going to have that sales force step out and go to the audience, look and listen, and then let that audience, that customer, that person walking through that trade show, let them cue your next response. Top selling companies have a sales force that improv well. It's a teachable art, and it can change not only the trajectory of your personal life, it could change the trajectory of your business life as well. I'm going to flip this around. I love visuals, and I brought it out in case somebody had a question I had to drop. So if what I'm going to talk to you, we talked about the engagement ring, that once you start to stage, go, and engage well, you're creating an engagement ring. That engagement ring is figurative, it's literal, depending upon what type of, what you're staging, a persona or a character. But in this one, this is the haunted house. And this was our group of 4 right here. This was Booger. We're gonna put Booger here, and Booger had the opportunity to go in any one direction. And he was engaging a group. Remember we talked about a stage? If Booger stood up, that engagement ring could be larger. Think about Booger. If his engagement ring is this large, if he were to move to the middle of this queue line, he might be able to catch everybody. But the reason I brought up this is I suggest not doing it alone. But if Booger has an engagement ring like this, think about Cletus. I'm just making up one. Think about Cletus. Cletus is a crazy hillbilly. Let me spell Cletus. Cletus. I'm making up how you spell it. Cletus is here. And Cletus maybe is here. He's going, his engagement ring is here. Right? And think if you had a third one, and that third one was, we had talked about, let's say this is Crazy Bob, and Crazy Bob is pretty loud, and Crazy Bob has a big engagement ring, right? So if you've got, folks see this, right? So if you're working in tandem in a theatrical production, you could cover every inch of a queue line with 500, 5,000 people by putting multiple people in and having these overlapping engagement rings. If you're thinking about this in a literal sense, think about it in a figurative sense. If this were a map of the United States, or let's say a map of Ohio, and this were Starbucks, not Booger, you might say, all right, we're in Ohio. Here's Ohio, and here's Cleveland, and here's Akron and Columbus, whatever. But we've got the Starbucks, and the Starbucks has an engagement ring here. And we want to franchise it, create a Starbucks, and create this engagement ring here. We want to franchise again, create this engagement ring, right? And so whether you're talking about individual persona building or you're talking about business, the idea of stage, go, and engage, and then being very literal about your engagement rings and how you could use that concept to be really effective at a hot queue line, or at SeaWorld, at the Shamu tank, or how you can cover the state of Ohio, perhaps cover the world in your engagement rings. And so with that, man, that has been the fastest hour that I probably ever taught and compressed these decades of experience into a very compressed time. I am open for questions, if there are any, or any comments as well. You got some, Beth?
So Keith says, we all need to have our own brand to be memorable. Can you address authenticity and honesty while inventing or reinventing your persona, your brand, etc., with the impression to others? People want confidence, but not fake.
Yeah. So what are the keywords? Authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
So Keith is my cousin, and he's the guy there that trying to get that big. Trying to think. Anyways, Keith is my cousin. He's the one who changed that kind of that image branding over the past year. What I would say is, as we're talking about the stage of our persona, our personal persona, or anything, the most important thing is the intentionality about what you put out. And so if there's intention to it, what is your backstory that you're sharing? What are your unique features? How are you striking? Your chin-up appearance, your wardrobe, your costuming. And then think about if you're going to be true to yourself in a persona or personal character development. I would say that the most important thing is never break character. And I would say that the backstory is such an important part of that. Is where did you come from? How can you deliver your backstory in an honest and a transparent way that makes your person, your character, and your not breaking character feel engaging and one that feels trustworthy? And hopefully that answers. Perfect.
Jim says, talk about sassy. Love that example.
Oh, yeah. Beth has a.
Oh, that's sassy.
That's sassy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So a great example, and I think labels have the opportunity of opening doors with some. So maybe when we raise our kids, we may call our little one Slugger, right? Or we might go, hey, Angel, or well, whatever it is, the labels or the names that we place upon people have an effect. Think about that in raising your kids and in building those people up around you. Positive words make a difference, positive labels. My wife, Beth, and she is sitting right here, and she's smiling. She gave me kind of that look on, what do you mean by sassy? Beth worked at Pizza Hut in high school.
Yep. And
Beth had, and she worked there for a few years, and she served pizza, and she, how many?
7.
7 years. During that time at Pizza Hut, she had managers, some that were fun, some that were less fun, but she had 2 different name tags. She had the traditional Beth, and then she had an alternate name tag that was sassy. And on nights, maybe on Friday nights, I don't even know, but I have a picture. On Friday nights, when it was the right crowd of people and the right manager, she was able to wear her name tag as sassy. And she went out and served pizzas as sassy. And instead of Beth, which has no connotation, going out there with the name tag sassy, kind of opened up opportunities for her to interact with those customers in a different way, and to be more memorable by just changing that name tag. Because that name tag would then, there'd be some expectations. And there were people that come in and go, you know what, I think I want to sit in Sassy's section this Friday night. And so the whole idea about creating.
And they send checks.
And they would, and she would sign the checks as sassy as well. And probably get bigger tips as sassy because there was something unique, memorable, and engaging there. So if you think about, what we're doing, the stage, the go, engage, and the business theater that we find ourselves in, you could use what we're talking about here as a way to shift things in memorable and meaningful ways in a traditional business, even if you're a Pizza Hut. Thanks for that question, Jim. And Beth has a smile on her face, so I think that the folks are enjoying this. As she's pulling up the next question, here's what I want to tell folks, and that is, I am excited to share this with people, and that's why we're doing this with Tues at 7. We're pushing out information. Over 25 years of teaching folks I've realized that there's, and I call them 10%ers, and that's just my thing. And maybe there's something out there written. But I consider 10%ers, 10% of people that join us for these events or to learn what we've been teaching tonight. About 10% will take it and apply it in some way to their lives. 10% apply it to their lives. If you're one of those 10%ers, or if you're one of the others, and you want to dig deeper into this, where a smaller group or a challenge is something that you're looking for, we're going to offer that. Those folks that have joined the Zoom, you know that Jim at bizfiregroup.com been sending out those links. We're going to send out links to a challenge. What I'll tell you is that the challenge, there's a cost to the challenge. The challenge is $20.20 because we want it to be minimal. That $20.20 is memorable for the pandemic year 2020, but it's going to allow me to spend some time instead of some of the hours that I'm putting in my regular job. I could focus into coaching folks and coaching a group and providing a challenge so that you could take it to the next level. And so we're going to send out the information on that challenge it'll probably come out here in mid-October. So we're going to go and we're going to go and provide the opportunity to dig deeper if that's where you want to go. I know that there's people here that are going to take what we did tonight and they can run with it on their own. But sometimes doing it in a community is of great value, not only to test out your original character, but also to give real live feedback, a think tank on persona building and image branding as well. Or talk about how do I build my engagement rings to cover the state of Ohio, or perhaps to blanket the world on our virtual stages as well. So keep an eye out. We're going to send those out to you. Other questions?
Are you going to go past 9 o'clock?
I will go a couple minutes past 9. Fortunately, Jim was really prompt.
I know.
And I feel because I'm prompted, maybe I should end it at 9. How many? One or two questions?
One more question.
One more question. One more
Okay.
question.
Talk about virtual engagement. And so we have these giant engagement rings, and they're very crowded and they're very busy. So what do you think about doing? How do we reach out and be most effective in our engagement rings virtually?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, because I've got a perfect answer for that.
Well, good.
And the answer is 3+ years ago, my wife decided to join the choir on Tuesdays. And so I went to Facebook, I pressed the live button, and I just started to provide content. At the very beginning, it was just special effects demos. Because remember, I was a haunt actor, and if I wanted the exact look, I had to learn to create it myself. Anyway, 3+ years ago, pressed the live button, started demoing, and a group started to watch. And it became a supportive community. We were giving information, passing it through so we could pass the art on. We then started to bring in other folks, because I ran out of content, other folks in, and as they came in, they were able to add their expertise. And their expertise then reached a larger audience. So now with 2 artists, the audience grew. And then after 6 months, 8 months, 12 months later, we started to bring in musicians and horror show hosts and circus performers and improv actors and prop makers and poets and writers. And we started to bring in all these different disciplines. And when we did that, the audience grew, and therefore the formation of the Tuesday at 7. Again, the reason why it's called Tuesday at 7 is because we meet it Tuesday at 7 o'clock. It's our once a week touch with an art community. But it was a virtual engagement that started that. So there was no science, there was no agenda at the very beginning, but it was to push the button, to have the courage. I was used to improvisation, so to press live was not ever any concern to me, because every single time you press live, you are stepping into improv territory. And you either do it well or you don't. but I had the training, so pressing the live was not an anxiety-ridden challenge to me, but I pressed it and the community formed around it. And so that is that answer is not succinct, it's longer. But if you're out there and you're looking to build your virtual audience, first of all, find out what it is that you're going to put out on stage. And the artists that we have coming over the next several days, tomorrow we have Neil Zaza, Teresa Rose, we have Carrie Esser. On Friday we have Joe Jensen and Jess Adenich. If you were to look at these artists, you'd see that they all have their own persona. They all are starting to create their virtual stage. Jess is also doing Fuzzy Sharks. It's using art to gather a community of artists and focused on saltwater conservation. And so she's pressed the button and she's gone live, and her audience is starting to form around. And Jim, not too long ago, said, listen, and Beth and I have 6 20-somethings in our charge between our kids and our nephews. And of those, we've realized that the traditional education system, I believe, is failing to meet the creative needs of the next generations, failing to meet the needs of our generations as well. And so I believe that everybody is equipped with a unique set of experience and tools. Once you develop those and you identify them, hopefully in a group, and hopefully in a group with us, hopefully once you identify those, you press the live button and you start to share those out. And as you share those out, those folks that want to learn those specialized things are going to gather. And that's my response to the last question of the night. Keep an eye out. I'm excited. Tomorrow, I am traveling to the personal music studio of Neil Zaza and Teresa Rose, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be moving the curtain and taking a look at their studio. It's going to be exciting for me. I'm doing the handheld. Directly following 8 o'clock is Carrie Esser. She is on an international stage as Makeup Madhouse. She's a body painter, a face painter. She is a platform content releaser. And both of those are ones you're going to want to catch. On Friday, we have Joe Jensen getting into the creative zone. He's going to be teaching the rituals for creatives. Bring a friend. And then Friday after that, just added, she's going to be talking about self-doubt. You're a badass. And those are in Jess's words, and you're going to enjoy her session as she talks about tackling anxiety, depression, and then kind of squashing that self-doubt, grabbing that confidence to press the button and go live, and to create your virtual audience if that's on your to-do list or on your bucket list. 9 o'clock, after Jess's session, we're going to have a bring your own beverage. It can be warm, it can be cold. But at 9 o'clock on Friday, bring your own beverage, and we're going to hang out virtually. If you are thinking that my glass of white Zinfandel as I'm alone in my house and opening up my computer screen is going to feel lonely, I assure you it's going to be engaging. We'll have the opportunity for the artists to share what they're doing, and we're going to have the opportunity for you to share what you're doing as well. As we, in this virtual world, we're finding ways to connect, not only in Ohio, Joe's from Chicago, Jess is from Tampa, but also with the audience that comes as far as Singapore and as close as a mile away. And we're excited that you guys have joined us. You're the live audience. Anybody who sees this later is not going to be able to interact live. And I appreciate the fact that you've shared a couple hours with us. We know your time is valuable, and we hope that you found, as we've compressed and pushed this information out, that it's been of value to you too. And guys, we're going to say so long. Good night. I'm going to hand it back to Jim. Jim, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we close down tonight?
And no, I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This has been an absolute blast and a treat for us. We know you got value. Please tell other people about it. The website is still open. People can continue to register for the other sessions and get other people here, because we know tomorrow is just going to be off the charts amazing as we get with the people that are Carrie has millions of views on TikTok and tens of thousands of followers. She is a force to be reckoned with. And once you see her stuff, you know why. You know why. And so she's going to be sharing what she does, some of the magic of what she does. And Neil and Teresa are just unbelievable talents. I can't wait to learn from them, and other people need to be here to learn from. So think of somebody you know that would love, that could use what they have to offer tomorrow night. And Jess's session on Friday, and I'm sure we all know somebody that is facing self-doubt, facing some of that anxiety and depression. Jess is going to help them find their inner badass. I can't wait for that. And Joe Jensen, oh my gosh, we've already had a sneak peek of his Rituals for Creatives. It is amazing. It is really mind-blowing, and needs every creative will benefit from that session. So get over to Be a Thriving Artist, send your friends over there, and let's get some more people registered and to experience these amazing sessions. I can't wait to share to experience these myself as well. So thanks everybody for coming tonight. All right, we all done? Fantastic. Yep. Thank you everybody. Have a great night, and hopefully we'll see you here tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Take care everybody. Have a great night.